Okay, so here we go. Here's our screen. I've got x squared minus 8 squared minus 2 times x squared minus 8 equals negative 1. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at this right here. Look right there. You've got x squared minus 8 squared. Okay, that's a binomial squared. That same binomial shows up right there also. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I am going to make my u value. This is called u substitution. It's used in calculus. Instead of multiplying all this out, which would be a nightmare, okay? It would be a nightmare. Now, you would still get the correct answer, but to square x squared minus 8 and then add everything together and then factor it again, it's just not what I recommend doing. I recommend doing the u substitution here. So I'm going to make x squared minus 8 my u value. So I've got x squared minus 8. And so I am going to write u, instead of writing x squared minus 8, I'm going to write u. And that u is squared. Okay? Then I have minus 2, and I've got x squared minus 8 again. And so I'm going to make that my u value. And that is equal to negative 1. Okay? So now I'm going to factor this. Before I can factor it, I've got to set it equal to 0. So I've got to add 1 to both sides. So I'm going to have u squared minus 2u plus 1. I just added 1 to both sides. This is much more straightforward to factor. So I've got u, okay, u squared, u times u. This is my product. My product is 1, so I'm looking for two numbers multiplied together that give me positive 1. Negative 2 is my sum. So the numbers that multiply together to give me positive 1 and add together to give me negative 2 is u minus 1 and u minus 1. Okay? So when we solve this, in both situations, we end up with our u value is equal to positive 1. Okay? So now we are going to take this u equals positive 1 and we're going to plug it in for that u right there. So don't stop. After you find your value for u, don't stop. Keep going. So now what I'm going to do, and let me get a different color. We'll go back to red right here. I'm going to take out that u and I'm going to put a 1. Because when I did the substitution, I found out that u is equal to 1. So I've got 1 equals x squared minus 8. Now I still have a quadratic right there. I've got the x squared right there. So I'm going to make this equal to 0. So I'm going to subtract 1 from both sides. So I have 0 equals x squared minus 9. Now I'm hoping that that looks familiar. I'm hoping that looks familiar to you because x squared minus 9 is a difference of perfect squares, and that factors to x minus 3 and x plus 3. That is a special product that you want to be able to recognize. So then I end up with x minus 3 equals 0 and x plus 3 equals 0. So my x values are 3 and negative 3. Okay? So my final answer to this is 3 and negative 3. Now I'm going to go back again because I just want to show you a little bit different way to solve this. Okay, so my final answers are 3 and negative 3. So I just want to go back to this step right here. Now, you may decide that instead of setting this equal to 0, you just want to add 8 to both sides. Okay, and you would end up with 9 equals x squared. Okay, and that's 100% okay. But when we take the square root of x squared and we take the square root of 9, you've got to put a plus or minus in front of that. Okay? So you've got to make sure you have plus or minus 3 equals x. Because 3 squared equals 9, but negative 3 times negative 3 also equals 9. So you've got to make sure that you have both positive 3 and negative 3 as part of your answer. Good afternoon. I've had a couple of questions on solving quadratics, and so I thought that I would do some of the more complex ones, a video, so that you can see it. And I'm actually going to do this one 2 different ways. This is not a quadratic, but it looks like a quadratic. A quadratic, it has to be raised to the second power. This is actually a quartic, but we are able to solve this very, very similar to how we solve a quadratic. Anytime that we're solving polynomials, we have to set it equal to 0. Right here, we've got this one set equal to -4. So the very, very first thing that we're always going to do is we are going to set it to 0. So I am going to add 4 to both sides of this so that I can get it set equal to 0. So I have y to the 4th minus 5y squared plus 4 equals 0. Okay? Now, we're working on factoring, and this right here can be factored. Y to the 4th minus 5y squared plus 4 can be factored. So, we're going to do our sum and our product just the same way. Our product is 4. So I'm going to write that down so that we can see that. Our product is 4. Okay, and our sum is -5. Our sum is -5. So, instead of putting y as the first part of our binomial, I am going to put y squared. And the reason that I'm putting y squared is because y squared times y squared gives me y to the 4th. Y to the 4th is a perfect square, and y squared times y squared gives me y to the 4th. So that's kind of the part that sometimes is tricky for students. And now we're just going to do this the same way. So now I've got 2 numbers multiplied together that give me 4, and added together give me -5. And those 2 numbers are -4 and -1. Okay? Now I'm just going to solve this the same way I would solve anything else. You could do this one or 2 ways. You could do y squared minus 4 equals 0. Y squared equals 4. And y equals plus or minus 2. Okay? You could do it that way. So then this would be y squared minus 1 equals 0. Y squared equals 1. So y would equal plus or minus 1. Okay? Because anytime that you take the square root, so look right here, I've got y squared equals 4. Y squared equals 4. So we know that 2 times itself gives us 4. But we also know that -2 times itself gives us 4. So that's why we've got our plus or minus right there. Okay? So that's one way we could do it. Another way that we could do it is we could factor these further. We could factor these further. Now, y squared minus 4 is a difference of perfect square. Y squared is perfect and 4 is perfect. So that can factor to y plus 2 times y minus 2. Okay? The same is true for y squared minus 1. That's y plus 1 and y minus 1. All of those are still equal to 0. So now I can do y plus 2 equals 0. So my answer there is y equals -2. Y minus 2 equals 0. And so that makes y equals +2. Y plus 1 equals 0. That's y equals -1. and y minus 1 equals 0. So that is y equals positive 1. So we get the same answer regardless of which way we do this. Now, I want to talk to you a little bit about something called U substitution. That is something that you'll use quite a bit when you are in calculus. So a lot of you that are taking this class are calculus bound because a lot of your majors require calculus. A lot of the majors that we kind of talked about. So what I'm going to do for this one, and I'm going to do this one in a different color just so we can kind of look at it. What I'm going to do is I am going to recreate this problem. I am going to say that my value u is going to equal y squared. Okay? So I am taking a y squared and I'm substituting in a u for that. Okay? So instead of writing y to the 4th, I am going to write u squared. Okay? Y squared times y squared is y to the 4th. So u times u is u squared. Then for this y squared, I'm going to put a u. So I'm going to have u squared minus 5u equals negative 4. Okay? So now I'm going to set it equal to 0 because I always have to set it equal to 0. Okay, so I'm adding 4 to both sides, so I get plus 4. Okay, and I factor this. And this is a pretty straightforward factor. Okay, so hopefully we do okay factoring that. Okay, because negative 4 times negative 1 gives me positive 4. Negative 4 plus negative 1 gives me negative 5. Okay, so now I solve u minus 4 equals 0. And u minus 1 equals 0. So my u value is 4 and positive 1. Okay, but you can't stop yet because we're not solving for u, we're solving for y. Solving for u just kind of got us halfway there. Now, we know that u equals y squared. So now I am going to take my u equals 4 and I'm going to make it y squared equals 4. And then instead of u equals 1, I'm going to have y squared equals 1. So when y squared equals 4, my y is plus or minus 2. When y squared equals 1, my y is plus or minus 1. Okay? Now that is one way to do it. And, you know, we had 2 different ways. So you can choose whichever way that you want to do it. Now I want to do a little bit more complex u substitution. Okay? So I'm going to go back one screen.